And we'd have applied our crackle medium, and it's dry. So you can dry it ahead of time with a blow dryer if you didn't do it long enough, and it can be done weeks and weeks ahead. It doesn't matter, it still works. I'm using a fan brush and I'm picking up lots of paint. I shovel it on. So I'm going to start and apply, coming from the top, and I'm putting on a lot of paint. The whole object here is, the thicker the paint goes on, the bigger the crackles will be. We can just lightly go back over an area, but we do not want to paint back, put more on, because what happens is the crackles begin right away. So what's happening as I apply this paint, it's beginning to crackle underneath. If I put more paint and paint on top and brush stroke in, it fills in those crackles that were happening underneath. So that's the reason we say don't go back and fill in lots more paint on top. We don't want it to be totally see-through anywhere either, because you see how our background, we want our picture on there. So it's not an issue, and especially for this project, we're having crackle that's just going to show up here and there. So it's not a case of we're concerned that this area doesn't have very much crackle, because it's not, some of them are not going to have any crackle. We applied the crackle. I need more paint. And so you see that you use a fair bit of paint when we're putting the paint on top. I always refer to it, like I said, about like shoveling it on. You want to scoop that paint up and apply that on. Normally, we never base coat with gobs of paint like that, because we could get ridges. For this procedure, it's totally different. So we're going to do this, and then I'm going to show you that if I was to take my blow dryer, I'll toss that in there. If I took my blow dryer or my heat gun, I'm just going to use the blow dryer because it does dry it quicker. My cracks will get bigger faster if I heat them. So if you see, you look at that, you see the crackle happening. But I'm going to just leave it crackle, leave it dry, because you guys are doing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to be taking a wipe, and we've dried our piece, but not to the point of hard dry. So now with crackle, it does take a while because the paint can actually just slide right off. So I'm going to take a wipe. This is just a baby wipe, and I'm going to use it, and I'm going to rub along the edges. So you see how I'm able to remove some extra paint along the crackled areas. So I'll flip it to use the fresher part to it all the time as I go. Up here, the crackle is a lot heavier, so this one will remove out. So you want to make sure that you're not taking out too much. But you see how this one, being that the crackles are bigger, and I want it to come up here and make it look like it has peeled from ages gone by. So I keep flipping my wipe, and then I'll swap out and get another one. The fresher the wipe, the easier it takes it off. And it depends on how dry we've let it dry as well. So I'm taking the excess off. If it's still very wet, like over here, I can see my crackle is quite wet. You can see that I've got a milky paint happening under there now. So I will take a wipe afterwards, a fresh one, after I'm done, and come back and kind of clean that off, because I don't want that whitish there. I want my dark showing through. So we'll go ahead and continue this all around the outer edges. Not so much in the inside, I just want to leave whatever crackled there, leave that alone. And if you get a little chunk of crackle that's laying there, wipe it off, because it'll dry and stay there as a chunk. So you come through, we want it uneven and jagged. You don't want it to end a straight line. You want it to work its way in and kind of be uneven. All right, so that's our mission. That's what we're gonna do to the rest of the board right now. Okay, I've rolled a little bit of a sticker tape along the bottom of my stencil, just one of these type things, and it just helps to hold it in place for me. I've mixed 1-to-1 cobblestone and sand gray, and I'm going to stencil, just stippling here and there. You can do the rubbing if you want, and I'm not completing sentences anywhere. We're just getting a little bit of the font here and there. And the paint's going to dry darker. So I'll lift that and I'll maybe come over here. Work it in. You don't want gobs of paint on your brush because that's where you tend to get a bleed through. So we just go through, add a few words here and there, and then maybe I'll take and I'll come in the middle, add part of a sentence here. I'm trying to gently, now I've dried my sky, so I'm going to go ahead now and do my soft mist again over the area, and I'm going to start by picking up on my 1/4" Deerfoot some celery, and I'm going to just come up in here. I'm actually going to soften the celery with a little bit of my blue chiffon. It's a little stronger than I want, so I'm going to just tap a little celery over here on this side, and that's going to bleed out in this wet paint. And then I'm going to pick up some of my aloe, and I don't have to clean the brush. Okay, I'm going to pick up aloe on the Deerfoot, tap it in on my palette. Let's see how that goes here. I may want to, yeah, I think I'm going to pick up some of that blue chiffon with that as well. So we'll soften. Yeah, I like that better. This is our next layer of tree line in here. Uneven. You always want your tree lines to be layered and uneven. I'll soften that, and then I'm going to pick up a little tiny bit of aloe with black cream. Just a little bit. I want to come in here with another little bits of layers in behind, closer to the ground. You don't necessarily have to meet up. Okay, so we'll put that in. I want a different height here, so now I'll go up there. Now, my misting has dried a bit, so I will do my spray over top. With these type of sprays, you see if I spray, it get a long stream and then it will go and fall. It's very nice and soft, and this will bleed out my paint. Now I can clean my brush out, get all the paint out of it. Be careful not to scrub Deerfoots against the brush ribs in your brush basin, because they're natural hairs and they break, just like your normal hair would break if you abuse it. So will your Deerfoot. So I can take the cleaned out Deerfoot and tap into my row of trees, and it will just blur out into that misty water. It's a little more visible for you in the darker trees. I can bring it up throughout, little here, there. just kind of softens. We just want a faint background, and you see how you're very faintly seeing very much of our blue chiffon sky there. I might add a little more of that blue chiffon in there. If I can find it on my desk, because I've now messied it up on my palette. So I'll just take that a wet brush again, pick up a little of the blue chiffon, and just tap a little. And I might take my just cleaned out Deerfoot and help to blur it out into that water. There. And I've got the words in the background, right? So when you have that, it's kind of, and the crackle and everything, where is what, you know? But it's very nice and soft and faint. And I do see through these guys over here. I don't want to have those empty patches where I'm seeing my background. Now, whatever colors we have over here, I want to mist, because it's going to be what has come through. So I just want it to be a tint of this color. So I'm just picking up a tint of whatever color is on these trees. Do you see how it's going to bleed out in my edges? I'm wanting that to just bleed out the edges. And I will do it on the other side, even though we're going to have some greenery coming from there. So I'm going to take, I may have to get into my palette with that. Now remember that I did add the blue chiffon into the celery. So that's what I would want. That's the celery with blue chiffon in it. And that's going to just bleed out. I don't want very much. We just want tints of whatever is there of our trees. It's not a lot. It's more of a bleed. And then again, we have this color here, the laurel, with that little bit of black green. And I don't even want it as bold as I've got it. I'm wanting it to be more of a bleed. So I'm just going to take right now, clean the brush. I misted it again, and my brush is actually going to pick up some of that. There. My damp brush is picking it up, so it's just leaving that bit of bleed. That works good for me. Now we're going to be having shrubs and things on here, and we'll bleed out some of the colors from our shrubs as well. So the next thing we're going to want to do is our path and our grass. So we'll lead on to those next. Once it's all nicely dried, I want to soften between our trees, whoops, and our sky. So we're going to take our blue chiffon, and we're going to take a domed stippler, dry brush, this type of brush, pick up my blue chiffon, I'm going to scuff it off on my toweling, try to find a dry spot because I've been spraying mist everywhere. And then I'm going to take this and nice and softly dry brush along the top of the trees from the sky down into these trees. So it's just going to gently fog everything in a bit more, just to soften it. So I don't know if you can see the difference from that, but it just softens the top of the trees so that it looks very faint and distant. This is what I'm wanting. I'm wanting it to have a little bit of a distance. Okay, and then I'm going to take a little tiny bit, I'll just throw that in the water. I'm going to take a little bit of our black green, and I'm going to, and I don't want very much, I'm going to take a small dry brush. And I'm going to take black green. And I just want to come around the ground line here. I don't want to stipple anything. I don't want it that bold or noticeable. And maybe a little more over here. It's just to add a little tiny bit of strength at the ground. It's like we're going to have, by the time I put my ground in here now, we'll just have a little bit of dark in that background. All right. I'm going to start on our path by using a 3/8 or number 10, an almondine, and I'm just going to come through and I'm going to chisel in. So by chisel, I'm using my brush like so, between the flat and the chisel basically. And I want to get my uneven. Now up here, I'd like it to get a little tinier as it fades off into our grass. And then as I come down to the bottom, I'm going to give it a little mist with our squirt spray bottle. I just want the bottom to fade away. Okay, so you see how the bottom's going to just fade away, like our outer edges. If I need to, I can use mop, soften it, or my natural sponge. And I'm going to dip the side of my brush, just like a side load, into khaki tan. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to chisel the outer edges of my path. Okay, so I'll flip my brush over, come back down this side. We'll come back and we'll strengthen a few areas with, I'll come over here. And again, as we come down into that moistened area, I'll still use this, but it's going to bleed out. That's not too bad. I'm going to soften the middle of the path. Wipe my brush. Actually, I'm going to kind of clean out my brush, because I'd like to take a little bleach sand and come in the middle here. Not all the way down to the, well, let's go close to all the way down, whatever. Yeah, maybe I like that. So we're just going to come in here. We want to highlight where our sun is hitting. Nice. Just a little swipe going off there. So it's heavier by the gate. Okay, so we have it heavier by the gate. And then we're just fading off up here. Cleaning out my brush again, because now I have white in it. And I want to just take a few areas. So I'm going to side load into, I've got a clean brush. I'm side loading into Bittersweet. And I'm going to come in with my Bittersweet just in a few spots. And we'll strengthen this up after the grass is in as well. Just keeping my brush flat, you see, so that it's able to kind of fade out and just disappear. And I do want it to come down into our bleed out area. Now, if your area that we're doing what we're calling our bleed out area, if it's starting to dry and it's not bleeding out, I just mist over top again, and it will tend to bleed out. So, and I'm going to make this side heavier. Or it doesn't have to be darker, but I want it to come out further. So it's not even. And I'm not necessarily looking for it to be so much of that chiseled look. So I might like to, I'm just going to grab a mop and just tap back in here and soften. There, that's what I want. Just soften that a little bit as it gets into the path. I'm okay seeing it strong and chiselly at the edge, but as it works out into the path, I don't want it as much. So I'm going to come up here in a few places. If you're nervous about coming in and only getting it in a few little areas, you can switch to your 1/4 inch. If that feels more comfortable for you, do you see how that just giving us a little bit of that dark? I'm wanting to have, and we will, like I said, we'll come back after in even a few, because we're going to want it to look like, say, that in a few places, you know? It's just going to give a little shadow under some tufts of grass. Okay, so, but we will come back after, because once we define where these tufts of grasses are coming out, once we use our little fan and we do our grass that's around the path, then we'll decide where we want to have it darker. All right. I'm going to be using my mini fan. It's a 20 from Princeton. They're very tiny. And we're going to put our grass line in. So I'm just going to go across there. I just kind of tap back and forth. The brush is at a little bit of an angle. Do you see that? I keep my handle at a little bit of an angle. I'm wanting, so the reason also, you might notice that I keep going through my pattern. My pattern is there so that I know where I'm placing things. Okay, so you will use that as a guideline. You're going to go back through it and put that back in afterwards. So we want our grass, and I'm going to do celery as a base or a primer, if we might. I'll stop about here because I'm going to be doing the spray afterwards and bleed it out a bit. And what I want you to see is that I'm just going to bring a little bit, you know, it's coming onto my path, just with the chisel of the brush, just the tip, tap that it comes in there. Okay, so we're coming through here. I'm not worried about too solid in the middle because we're going to come in with a little bit of our celery shoot and some bleach sand. So right now I want to have, and we're also going to come in with avocado, bring in a bit of dark. So I come right into my post. This is going to be able to see grass through our gate. We'll be able to, you know, so this works out very well to use our pattern as a guideline. We'll see where we're going to see through and what we're going to see. And I'm this way I know where I want to stop with my grass. Don't want to bring it all the way past there. We're going to have bleed out there, but it's going to be shrubs that we're going to have there. So I'm just tapping that in there. So I'm going to give my brush a little wipe off on my towel. I'm going to pick up my celery shoot. Now that's really quite nice and bright. So celery shoot is going to be tapped in, and it is going to blend into our wet celery. It's going to work out quite nice. So I start in the middle where I want it to be the brightest. Tap my way upwards, downwards. You see how I'm working it. Kind of a almost rose, but we're not wanting perfect looking as if it's rose. Might put a little bit more in here. Don't have enough to carry down. This side here is going to be a little more of the dark. So this is tapped in. I'm going to pick up a little bit of bleach sand, and that's going to be working into the very middle. Now I do tap it on the palette so that my brush isn't gobbed with paint. What I mean by that, I don't want to come on here with a great big bunch of bleach sand, and then I'll end up choking out all of the celery shoot. And we can just kind of do a few flicks up if you want. That's whatever you'd like there. Okay, so we've tapped this in here. I'm going to give my brush actually a wash off because it's not easy to just get rid of that light color out of there. And I do want to put in a little bit of my avocado now, and I don't want it to get blended out in color with my bleach sand. So my avocado, I want it to kind of be down around these areas here, and it comes in, and I'm kind of bringing it in little groupings, if we call it. This side here is going to end up with quite a bit of the avocado. But remember, it's still blending into the celery. So it's not going to be pure avocado. I'm just going through, and if I want to create a flat edge, I can just streak and chisel along the end of that. And we'll put, I just want to have a few little areas of it. I don't want to bring it back too far. Once in a while back in here, we'll put in a little bit that's going to give us the look of a tuft back there in the grass. I think right here I've got it a bit higher than I want, so I'm just going to tap some of the lighter down into it. And if I need to pick up a bit more celery to work in with it, because it's pretty dry down here, I'll go for that. And now here again, I'm going to go for my misting at the bottom, so that we can get that bit of a bleed. So I have that avocado on my brush, and I'm just going to bring it down into this, almost a pat and a chisel type effect. And again, at the side, I can take, I've actually tossed my mop into the water, which will be just fine. Might work well, actually. And I'm just going to soften the bottom here because this is our bleed, right? There. It's working quite nicely. So it's softening that into our bleed. There we go. So that's how we're going to apply our grass. I'm going to come right here with this mop just to see what I get here. I kind of like that. So with a wet mop, I'm doing that. All right, here we go.